Vin Diesel quietly slipped into his own restaurant and froze when he caught the faint sound of someone sobbing. Years ago, he had launched Torx, a polished yet approachable dining spot in Los Angeles. It wasn't some celebrity vanity stunt or an easy way to spend extra cash. Vin had poured years into fine-tuning the recipes, hiring chefs who cared about the craft and shaping Torx into a place where both everyday locals and Hollywood stars could feel at home over a plate of food. But Vin also understood that no business thrived on numbers alone. The real heartbeat of any restaurant wasn't in balance sheets, it lived in the kitchens. The break room murmurs, the worn-out sighs of staff after grueling shifts. That was why, every few months, Vin made a point of dropping by unannounced. No spotlight, no entourage, just a man in jeans and a hoodie blending into his own business like a stranger. That particular Friday night, Torx was alive with energy. Dinner service was in overdrive. Servers weaved between tables with trays stacked high with steaks and martinis, the air thick with the scent of garlic butter and charred ribeye. Warm lighting washed over couples on dates, groups of friends laughing, even solo guests savoring meals in quiet contentment. On the surface, everything looked perfect, but Vin knew appearances could fool. At the edge of the dining floor stood the manager, a tall, stiff figure in a pressed navy shirt. His posture was rigid, his gaze sweeping across the room with sharp precision. He didn't look simply attentive. He looked possessive, controlling. Something about it prickled Vin's instincts. Heading toward the bar, Vin heard it. A faint, choked sound trailing out from the side hallway by the kitchen. At first, he thought he imagined it. But as he passed closer, it became clearer. Someone was crying. Not loud, not theatrical, but the restrained, breaking kind of cry that came from someone fighting to stay strong. Vin slowed his stride. The break room door stood slightly open. Through the gap, he glimpsed a young woman hunched forward, fingers digging into the edge of a metal counter as if it were the only thing holding her up. Beside her was another worker in Torx uniform, leaning close, whispering frantically. Vin didn't know who she was, but the anguish on her face punched him in the gut. Something was deeply wrong, and he wasn't about to ignore it. He turned back to the bar, lowering himself onto a stool. Outwardly calm, inwardly sharp. That wasn't ordinary stress. That was fear. Vin had been in the restaurant world long before fame. He knew the grind of rude customers, endless shifts, sore legs. But this was different. His instinct was to step in immediately, but tonight he wasn't Vin Diesel the owner. He was just another guest. For now, he would watch and listen. The young male server's voice floated from the break room in pieces. "You can't let him. He doesn't control you." The woman's reply came in a shaky whisper. "What choice do I have?" He said, "If I don't do it, I'm finished." Vin's hand tightened around the glass of water set in front of him by the bartender. His first guess that a rude customer was involved dissolved. No, this was about someone inside the restaurant. "Can I get you anything else?" the bartender asked. Vin forced a small smile. "Just water's fine." The bartender nodded and moved along. Vin's eyes, though, slid back toward the floor. The manager in the navy shirt still stood watch, arms crossed, gaze heavy, an unsettling presence that made the whole room feel tighter. Then, movement caught Vin's attention. The young man from the break room stepped back out onto the floor, shoulders stiff, his face carefully neutral. The server returned to the floor, his jaw tight, hands restless as he fussed with the notepad tucked into his apron. He looked shaken. Vin recognized a window when he saw one. Rising smoothly, he strolled toward the service station tucked at the back where the young man was stacking plates. "Hey, man," Vin said quietly. "Got a pen?" The kid flinched, startled, then nodded. "Oh, yeah, sure." He grabbed one from the counter and handed it over. Vin accepted it, but lingered. His gaze fell to the name stitched on the tag. "Tyler." "Thanks, Tyler," Vin said, voice steady. "I couldn't help but notice your coworker seems pretty upset." Tyler froze. His fingers clamped down on the plates in his hands. "She's fine," he blurted too quickly. Vin tipped his head, unconvinced. "She didn't look fine." The young man's throat bobbed as his eyes darted across the room, landing on the manager in the navy shirt. Then they dropped to the floor. Vin didn't need more than that. He'd been around too long not to recognize fear. After a beat, Tyler exhaled shakily. "She's not fine," he confessed, voice dropping to a whisper. Vin studied the strain written all over his face, the stiff jaw, the nervous twitch of his hands at his apron. Tyler wanted to open up, but hesitation was holding him hostage. Vin softened his tone. "Is it a customer problem?" The hesitation before Tyler answered gave Vin his answer. "No," Tyler murmured at last. "It's not." His eyes flicked again toward the front of the restaurant, where the manager loomed near the hostess stand, scanning the room like a general commanding troops. Tyler drew in a sharp breath, stealing one more glance toward the break room before shaking his head. It's personal business, that was a lie. Not malicious, but born of fear. Vin recognized the signs. Workers cornered in situations they couldn't leave, tied down by money, circumstances, or something darker. Leaning against the counter, Vin kept his posture easy. "How long has she been here?" Tyler's reply came without thought. "A little over a year." Then he stiffened, suspicious. "Why?" Vin shrugged, playing it off. "Just wondering if she likes it." Tyler gave a short, bitter laugh. "She doesn't, but she can't afford to quit." And there it was, the truth. She wasn't just stressed. She was stuck. Vin's gut tightened. This was bigger than a tough shift. Something heavier was at play. But before he could press further, Tyler's whole body went rigid. Vin didn't need to turn to know why. The atmosphere had shifted, weighted by a presence. The manager was coming. "Everything all right over here?" The voice was smooth, practiced, carrying an undertone of authority that demanded submission. Tyler immediately dropped his gaze, fumbling with the plates as if they were the only thing that mattered. "Yes, sir. Just helping a customer." Vin finally turned to face him. Up close, the man's mid-40s age showed in sharp lines across his face. His shirt was crisp, his hair combed within an inch of perfection. But his eyes, cold, unbothered, belonged to someone who relished control. The tag on his chest read, "Rick Calloway. Can I help you with something?" Calloway asked, polite but edged. Vin offered a casual smile. "Just needed a pen. Tyler was kind enough to lend me one." Calloway's eyes didn't waver. "Good." He slapped Tyler's shoulder with a firmness that bordered on a warning. "Let's stay focused on the job." Tyler's head bobbed quickly. "Yes, sir." Vin clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay neutral. Not yet. He thanked Tyler and walked away, though he could feel Calloway's eyes burning into his back the whole time. By the time Vin stepped outside, the cool night air was the only thing keeping his frustration in check. To anyone watching, he probably looked like just another diner scrolling his phone. But in truth, his mind was racing. Emily was terrified. Tyler was paralyzed. And Calloway? That man... Calloway had the look of a man who lived off control. Vin had crossed paths with plenty of harsh bosses in his time, but this felt different. Sharper, deliberate, like every move was calculated. If Vin wanted the truth, he'd need someone less afraid to talk. As if on cue, the door swung open. Nate, the bartender from earlier, stepped outside. He leaned against the brick wall, thumb swiping lazily over his phone, taking a breather. Vin recognized the chance and walked over, hands tucked in his pockets. "Long night?" Vin asked. Nate startled, then relaxed. "Yeah, Fridays are always a grind." Vin nodded, easing against the wall beside him. "Mind if I ask you something?" The bartender hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure." Vin kept his tone easy. "Your manager, Calloway. What's he like?" Nate's face changed in a flash. Not much, just a shadow that crossed his features. But Vin caught it. "He's strict," Nate answered cautiously. "Likes everything done a certain way." "That normal for managers?" Vin pressed gently. Nate scanned the area as though checking for ears. Lowering his voice, he muttered, "He's not just strict. He's..." The words stuck in his throat before finally spilling in a whisper that chilled Vin. "He makes Emily stay late. Alone." Vin's shoulders went rigid. "She's the only one?" Nate gave a tight nod. "Yeah, and he's always talking to her like she owes him. I've seen it. The way she freezes up whenever he calls her into his office, it's not right." Vin's arms folded across his chest, fists pressing against his biceps. He'd seen this before. Men in power isolating the vulnerable, twisting control until their victims felt trapped. He forced a slow breath through his nose. She ever say anything about it? No, Nate admitted quickly. But she doesn't have to. Everyone sees it, Vin exhaled through clenched teeth. This wasn't just a bad manager, this was predatory. And that meant everything had changed. Appreciate you telling me, Vin said, patting Nate's shoulder. You did good. Nate managed a weak smile, but his eyes stayed uneasy. Vin turned back toward the restaurant. Emily was still inside, still under Calloway's thumb, and Vin wasn't about to stand by. He'd seen this kind of abuse before, climbing his way through Hollywood, watching power-hungry execs corner those beneath them. Calloway fit the same mold. The glass doors swung open as Vin re-entered. The dinner rush had tapered off. Tables were clearing, laughter fading, servers moving slower as the night wound down. Fewer customers now, fewer eyes watching, but Calloway was still there, still standing at the service station, scanning the room with that same smug posture, as though the place belonged to him alone. Vin didn't pause. His steps were deliberate, cutting across the floor with purpose. He bypassed the bar, ignored the hum of conversation, heading straight for Emily. She was mid-service, speaking to a customer, her smile polite but lifeless, her tone flat. Her hands moved steadily, but her eyes, they were vacant, dulled. When she saw Vin approaching, her body stiffened like she was bracing for another problem. "Excuse me?" Vin said firmly. Loud enough, Vin drew in a measured breath. "I know what's going on," he said quietly. "You don't need to explain. I just want you to hear me. You're not alone." Emily's face twitched, a crack in her composure. For a fleeting second, it looked like she might shatter, but then she forced a brittle smile, shaking her head. "I don't know what you mean." Vin didn't back off. "Calloway!" "The late nights. The way he corners you. I see it. And it's not okay." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. Fear. That's what this was. Pure, suffocating fear. The kind that made a person believe they were trapped. "I can't," she whispered. "You can," Vin said firmly. His eyes locked on hers. "And you will. Because I promise you, he's not untouchable." Before she could answer, a shadow stretched across them. Rick Calloway had arrived. His tone was smooth, but the undercurrent was razor-sharp. "Is there a problem here?" Vin didn't turn right away. He kept his gaze on Emily, catching how she stiffened at the sound of Calloway's voice, how her fingers twisted around her apron's hem. That told him everything he needed. Finally, Vin turned, his expression unreadable. "Just having a conversation." Calloway's lips curled into a smile that never reached his eyes. "Well, Emily has a job to do. She doesn't have time for private talks." Vin caught it, the way Emily flinched at the word private. It was confirmation. His shoulders squared, presence expanding like a wall between her and Calloway. "Actually," Vin said, voice level, "I think you and I should have a conversation. Right now." Calloway's smirk slipped. "Excuse me?" Vin reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and flipped it open. His executive ownership credentials gleamed in the dim light. Emily gasped. Around them, servers froze mid-step. The room itself seemed to stop. "My name," Vin said, his voice calm but edged with steel, "is Vin Diesel, and you and I need to talk." The restaurant plunged into stunned silence. Customers turned in their seats, sensing this was no ordinary workplace spat. Employees exchanged quick, wide-eyed glances. Calloway blinked rapidly, mouth working uselessly. For the first time, he looked unsettled. "Sir, I didn't realize—" "No, you didn't." Vin cut him off, his voice firm as a blade. "And that's exactly the problem, isn't it?" Then, softening, he turned back to Emily. His tone shifted, gentle. "You're safe now." Her eyes widened, lips parting as if to speak, but only a shaky breath escaped. Still, for the first time all night, her posture straightened. Calloway's unease was obvious now, sweat breaking through the mask of professionalism. "Sir, I assure you, there's been some kind of misunderstanding. If you'll allow me a moment—" "Your office, now." Vin's voice was unyielding. Calloway swallowed, his bravado crumbling. He gave a stiff nod and pivoted, leading the... Vin leaned forward, both palms pressing hard against the desk. "You know what else is unusual?" he asked, voice dropping to a dangerous low. "A restaurant manager abusing his position to intimidate his staff?" Calloway flinched. I don't know what you mean," he stammered, but Vin's eyes never wavered. "I know exactly what you've been doing," Vin said coldly. "I know about the late-night shifts. I know how you treat Emily, and I know you believe no one will ever call you out." Color drained from Calloway's face. "Sir, I assure you I've always conducted myself professionally. If there have been any—" "Save it," Vin snapped, cutting him off. He hadn't come here for excuses. Sliding a hand into his pocket, he pulled out his phone and tapped once. A recording played. Emily's voice, raw, shaking. "If I don't do what he says, I'm gone." Then Tyler's hushed reply, "You can't let him. He doesn't own you." Calloway's skin went chalk white. "You should have known better," Vin said icily. "You've been playing this game for years, haven't you? Preying on employees desperate to keep their jobs, making them feel trapped. But hear me now, you just ran out of time." Calloway's hands trembled. "Please, I can explain—" "No, you can't." Vin's tone was final. He lifted the phone again, this time dialing corporate HR. "You're done," he said simply. "You'll never work in this industry again." Calloway sat frozen, powerless, as Vin strode toward the door. His authority had been stripped away in an instant. And Vin, he wasn't finished. When Vin stepped back into the restaurant, the air was thick with tension. Emily, Tyler, Nate, and the rest of the staff waited anxiously. He inhaled deeply, then looked straight at Emily. "He's gone," he said softly. "You're safe." Her lips parted, breath catching, relief, disbelief, then release. For the first time in months, her shoulders eased. A shaky exhale slipped free. Nate looked stunned. The others exchanged glances, still unsure if they could believe what they'd just witnessed, but Vin knew this wasn't the end. "You've all been working under someone who never deserved that position," Vin said firmly. "That changes tonight." Emily wiped her eyes, swallowing back tears. "What happens now?" Vin gave her a small, steady smile. "That depends on you," she blinked, processing. For the first time in more than a year, she felt something she thought she'd lost. Control. She glanced at Tyler, still stunned, then at Nate, who gave a tentative nod. Everyone was waiting for her. Emily drew a shaky breath. "I don't want anyone else to go through this," she said quietly. "Not here. Not anywhere." Vin nodded. "And they won't." He turned to the others. "From now on, this restaurant is under direct review. We're not just replacing Calloway. We're making sure no one like him ever gets that kind of power again." The room was silent, his words heavy but resolute. Then Tyler spoke up. "Sir, with respect, this isn't just about Calloway." Vin's gaze sharpened. "Go on." Tyler hesitated, then stepped forward, voice steadier now. "It's the system. The way things are run here, the pressure, the silence, the fear. It's bigger than just one manager." Nate nodded firmly. "A lot of us feel like we can't say a word. The moment we complain, we're out." Emily lowered her eyes, guilt flickering. "I wanted to quit so many times," she whispered. "But I couldn't afford to. And part of me thought, maybe this was just normal." Vin's jaw tightened. This was why he'd gone undercover. Not for numbers, not for profit margins, but for the things hidden beneath reports and policies. The truth employees were too scared to say out loud. He took a breath. "That ends today." Everyone's eyes were on him. "I don't just want to fix this restaurant," Vin said. "I want to fix the system, and I'll need your help. That means transparency. That means trust. That means when something is wrong, you speak up." Emily still looked unsure. "And if we do, will anyone actually listen?" Vin met her gaze. "I will." She studied him carefully. Then finally she nodded. For the first time that night, she looked like she believed it. An hour later, Vin sat alone in his car, watching as the employees locked up for the night. Emily walked out with Tyler and Nate, the three of them talking softly. They looked lighter, as if the crushing weight of the past year had begun to lift. Vin exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. This was just one restaurant, one manager, one location. But how many others were still out there? How many Emilys were still afraid to speak? How many times had he looked at a glowing report and assumed everything was fine, when it wasn't? Leadership wasn't about balance sheets or efficiency reports. It was about people. And tonight, he'd been reminded why he did this in the first place. Too many in power chose to look away, treating employees like numbers instead of human beings. But true leadership wasn't about control. It was about responsibility. So if you ever feel trapped under someone abusing their authority, speak up. And if you see someone else being crushed by silence, don't look away. Because sometimes it only takes one voice to break the cycle,